Hey everybody, this is Deacon Kyle Tietz. Rabbi Abraham Heschel was an Orthodox rabbi in the 20th century, lived for a time in the United States. And one of his early books was entitled The Sabbath, or the Shabbat. And for the Jewish people, the Sabbath is celebrated from the evening of Friday until the evening of Saturday. And sort of something similar continued in the Christian tradition, except on Sunday, the day of the resurrection. But the idea of having a holy day of the week, a day of rest, based on the model of creation that we hear in Genesis. But anyway, in his book, Rabbi Heschel contends that God is more concerned about sanctifying time than he is about sanctifying space. God is more concerned about bringing holiness to time than to space. Very interesting contention, especially considering the importance of the temple and the promised land in early Judaism. But we see something kind of similar in the readings for today. We find first in the reading from Isaiah, we hear about Hezekiah, one of the few just kings in the history of Israel. And he's on his deathbed, and he's praying to the Lord for healing. And the Lord grants him 15 more years to live, that additional gift of time. And in the gospel today, we hear Jesus say these provocative words. He says, "I say to you, something greater than the temple is here." And he goes on to say, "For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath," saying that Jesus has power over this sacred time. Rabbi Heschel has this quote to say, talking about the importance of time over space. He says, "There is a realm of time where the goal is not to have, but to be, not to own, but to give, not to control, but to share, not to subdue, but to be in accord. Life goes wrong when the control of space, the acquisition of things of space, becomes our sole concern." What he's saying here is that we can get caught up in the day-to-day, focus too much on the temporal, the earthly, caught up in work and labor, where really God is inviting us into relationship with Him, where we just exist. And we find this not in space and things, but in time, when we enter into sacred time with the Lord. What does this look like for us as Christians? Well, if we commit ourselves to daily prayer, that is a way of sanctifying our day, beginning in the morning and the evening, sanctifying the day with time. Sunday liturgy, going to Mass, is a way of sanctifying the week, taking that day of rest, that day for holiness and reflection. And particularly when we go to Mass, we enter into sacred time, the sacred time of the liturgy. We step outside of the normal day-to-day busyness and enter into the time of Jesus' sacrifice, His death and resurrection. We enter into a foretaste of heaven. So our reflection for today is, how do we find God in the sacred time? How is perhaps God inviting us into this sacred time more so than even being concerned about places, things, objects? Certainly it's good if we can pray in church or we have holy objects or things like that. But God is trying to seek us in time. God is trying to find us and give us that space where we can recognize that we just are, that we are created good, and we can be in relationship with God. God bless everybody.